And we're back in the building once again. The NBA regular season has ended. The playoffs begin on Saturday, but in the middle of that, we're currently in the midst of a play-in tournament, which has served up some really good games so far. We still have yet to determine who the 8th seed will be in the East and West Conference, and that is for tomorrow. We already know who's going to be the 7th seed and who they're matching up against on the East and the West. We're looking forward to the playoffs. We got a nice show for you people out there tonight. Big up to everybody who's going to come in as we go through the show. Man like CM in the building once again. What you saying, bro?
Come on, man. We're back again. Very important part of the season. We've had a mad end to the regular season in terms of positionings and changes, especially in both conferences in the East and in the West. Now we've got these play-in games to kind of dissect and speak about. So let's get straight to it, man.
All right, man. People, if you're in here right now, make sure you're hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. If you're new, hit that notification bell, share this out on your social media to all your friends and all of that good stuff right there. But I want to take it back. Right? So Sunday, end of the regular season. On the East, I was like, I ain't watching Celtics were through. It's none of the starters is going to be. The game I was looking at was Orlando versus the Bucks. And I was like, this is a big game. Out of the games that were on at that particular point in time, I was like, it's between New York and Chicago, and then Orlando and the Bucks. Now, I was very surprised to see the Bucks drop down to the 3rd seed and not maintain their position, and see the Knicks. The Knicks even, we'll speak about that in a little, but they was in a little bit of bother when it went to OT. I was like, this could be a bit of a situation for them, and the Bucks could end up stealing it after losing their game. But let's talk about that game in the beginning. So the Bucks losing that game to Orlando, crucial game that seen them drop to the third place in the East. What do you think about that situation and what's happening at the Bucks? And like, I know we touched on it last week, in terms of Doc Rivers and what's happened there, but now with Giannis injured, like it's been confirmed since then, like he's now going to be injured for a bit of time. They've confirmed their playoff series against the Pacers, which also this season it cooked up a few narratives that we're looking forward to now when we get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
What do you think about them dropping from 2 to 3 in the East?
Well, it doesn't make life any easier for them. I think they've had a horrific second half of the season. A lot of inconsistencies. Now they're missing out on Giannis. I'll always wait to see how they perform once we get into that playoff setting. That will be very interesting to see. But just like speaking based off of this game, they didn't shoot the ball well. When you look at Dame Lillard, 2 for 14, Chris Middleton, 6 for 15. Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez had decent performances, but really not enough to drag that team into a winning position. Whereas you look at Orlando, they're motivated. They want to end the season strong. It was their best season in how many years? So they want to end it strong. A young team that are willing to prove a point, even against a team like the Bucks who have been struggling. They have championship pedigree of past. So in that regard, a really good win for Orlando. You got Wagner putting up 25, Paolo Banchero ending his season strong as sophomore season, and he's doing bits leading this team into the playoffs. Done a fantastic job there, and just a lot of winning contributors as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how Orlando end up playing in that playoff position. You know, for the longest time we thought it was going to be potentially a Knicks matchup. Nah. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens here, because with the Bucks, we can kind of touch on the fact that, okay, some of those guys, they've played in the playoffs. They're tried and tested. But at the same time, and I've said this about Miami, a lot of people were having these conversations after Jimmy Butler's injury. How much goodwill can you continue to give a team that have shown you that they are in trouble? And right now, when you put the Bucks up against the Pacers, it's like you never know, because the Bucks ain't a good defensive team anymore. The Pacers ain't a good defensive team. So virtually it's going to be which offense comes out on top, which coaches are going to be able to make the adjustments in between each game in the series to see, can I get the better of this side on any given night on the basketball court? And that's going to be an interesting battle if we can see the likes of Tyrese Halliburton back to his best for Indiana. For the Bucks, it's going to need to be Damian Lillard who steps up offensively because they're not going to have Giannis. Chris Middleton's going to have to be better than he has been for quite a while now. Can he do that? Does he still have that in him? They might even need a bit from Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, of course. Those guys are going to have to dig in deep and kind of find what made them successful in the past. But do they have that in them? I'm not too sure at this moment of time. For the Pacers, the question is going to be experience. It's going to be how are you going to be able to contain a Dame and Co if they're playing at the highest of levels. But, there are an equal amount of questions on the other side too. And for Orlando, they're going up against Cleveland, who I think are a tough side. They're a good defensive team. They've got some players who can step up offensively as well. When you look at Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and then if other guys can also step up, I know Jarrett Allen has had a good offensive year as well. Can Evan Mobley step up too? So there are some interesting questions when you're putting kind of two young cores together against each other. I feel like that is looking forward to being a very fun series for a lot of people to watch. But boy, man, the Bucks, they dropped to the 3rd seed, and I can't say I'm surprised because just we spoke about it last week. They have made some mistakes, and you can filter and go all the way back potentially to the off season to see what the first one may have been.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that game and I just wanted to see how they would fare against a physical side without Giannis. The fact that this season there's this last part of the season they've not been great at all. The fact that they basically were 500, or now I think they're below 500 after that towards the end of that season, right? So I know that Orlando physical side, the way you get at Orlando, you have to play them with pace. That's the way they struggle. Not to say that they can't handle it to a certain extent because they got like older players or whatnot, but there's a lot of big bodies there, like they're big guys, like you're gonna make them run the floor for pretty much the whole 48 minutes if you want to beat them. The Bucks are an older side, they don't have that level of energy. I'm looking at Dame Lillard and I'm like, the Dame that we are used to seeing is not the Dame we're seeing for the Bucks. And I don't know if this is him preserving energy so that when we get into the playoffs, we look like it's playoff Dame, but I don't think it's gonna be that. I think that this team is super over reliant on Giannis, and the fact that he's now out injured in a series going up against the Pacers, where this season I think the Pacers are 3-1 against them, maybe 4-1 against them, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's gonna be tough. Like, and I just don't know if Doc Rivers is at that point now where he's capped in terms of his coaching acumen. Like, I don't think that he's gonna be able to overcome this. Like, the amount of negativity, pressure on this team, they're gonna struggle. And I was surprised to see them not really push to at least try and get that second seed and solidify it so that they could meet a potential Sixers who have a Joel Embiid who's still trying to get himself back into rhythm, and a Miami team who've been inconsistent all year. You would have loved to have gone for that revenge matchup against the Miami Heat if they had made it through, for example, yesterday, but that's not going to happen. And now you're going to find yourself in a tough series against the Pacers. I'm not so sure if they'll lose the series, but it's going to be a tough series. Like, they may lose it. I mean, the 8th seed last year beat them. They were number 1. Like, so there's going to be a bit of nervousness. You've got players that have been out of form completely, that they're not playing well. They have the injury to their biggest and best player. And, you got a coach who's looking like he's out of his depth at this point. Like, and it's a bit mad. But Anyway, like I wonder what's gonna happen, and we'll find out on Sunday when they begin their series. But let's move over to New York. So the Knicks usurping the Bucks and are heading into the 2 spot, facing the Sixers after their win last night. We'll discuss the Sixers in a little bit. Now, in that game against Chicago, I saw something that we haven't seen from the Knicks all year: turnovers. Like they were turning over the ball, unforced errors a lot of the time, right? Which kind of spoke to me to say, "Ooh, this is a high pressure situation," and they're struggling to get their offense going. Don't get me wrong. Jalen Brunson was getting his, Dante DiVincenzo was getting his, but they in certain moments they were turning over the ball, and it was like you can't be doing that in the playoffs. You got to make sure that you keep hold of the ball in the playoffs. You cannot be just turning it over in different moments. Got through that game. Don't forget that the Bulls have been in many situations where when it's crunch time, clutch time, they have to play out. DeMar DeRozan over the last 3 years has basically been one of the best players in the clutch in the league. So it was a tough kind of ending to the game for the Knicks, where they was able to get over the line and do what they needs to do. I'm wondering the amount of minutes that some of these players are playing for the Knicks specifically. What's gonna happen? Are they gonna burn out as they move through the playoffs? I mean, because right now they're looking at it and they're saying, "Oh, we got Sixers home court advantage against the Sixers." Joel Embiid is a bit touch and go. We don't know if we're gonna get the full Joel Embiid. He's been unlucky with injuries going into the playoffs over the last 3 years. They feel confident that they can bypass that one. And if you bypass that one, then you can get a series against, I believe, who is it supposed to be? It will be the Bucks and the Pacers, I think. I think that's the series they get. Is it? I think so. Yes. Yeah, they get the Bucks and the Pacers, the winner of that series. So they're looking at it and they're saying, we could potentially have a run here at a conference finals. What do you think is going to happen, especially that? Well, no, what do you think is the impact of these minutes that Tibbs has been playing a lot of their players, their top players? They've been getting 48 minutes a night. Some players, I think Dante DiVincenzo played the most minutes he's ever played recently. I think 50 odd minutes.
Yeah.
Like in the game, like obviously they went to an overtime in one of their games and he played 50 odd minutes and it was like, okay, what's going on here? Like, are they gonna burn out as they get deeper and deeper into the playoffs?
This is the thing, right? Towards the end of a regular season, teams usually want to rest some of their key players. But because of the stakes being so high towards the end of this regular season, we've seen a lot of players play high minutes. And especially when it comes to the Knicks, those guys week in, week out for months now have been playing 40 plus, almost 50 minutes at times in games consistently. Some guys playing a whole 48 in this team, your Josh Harts and Coles. So it will either do one thing: if the conditioning and the fitness of the team is great, then they might be able to pull through in this playoff period, especially depending on the difficulty of each of their matchups and how they fare, especially in that first round. I think it will be telling against the 76ers because, Philadelphia themselves, their star guy, not exactly fully fit. Can you take advantage of that at times? How many minutes will Joel Embiid be playing consecutively? Tyrese Maxey, he likes to play in the open floor. So push the ball with pace, get some steals, go out in the fast break and get points that way, put up 3-pointers and so forth. So it will be telling in the first round to see how the Knicks will fare. But, we've always seen guys who play, high amounts of minutes and they exert a lot of energy in the regular season. Sometimes their bodies break down when it comes to the playoff period because there is that kind of boost in intensity, physicality, and just overall like mental exertion, really. So I want to see how the Knicks look in the first couple of games against Philly to kind of read where they're at. Because I feel like as that series goes on, and especially depending on what kind of Philadelphia team we get, what kind of Joel Embiid and stuff, if we get the second half against Miami, Philadelphia, then that could be a really difficult series for them to navigate. And if they do navigate out of that, how are they going to look moving forwards in the playoffs? So it's an interesting conversation.
I think it's going to be a tough series. Just looking at it, like the positioning in the Eastern Conference doesn't look like it doesn't give you a true picture of like where these teams are. If Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid put together that partnership that they did at the start of the season before Embiid went down, this series becomes a 6-7 games series. It's not going to end up being the Knicks dominating it like they have, like how they've kind of played. Don't get me wrong; they've got themselves Jalen Brunson, who he's been one of the best. He's been one of the best players in the Eastern Conference this year. But then you look at Josh Hart. Josh Hart stepped up a lot over the last like quarter of the season. Dante DiVincenzo finally getting himself a starting position within this Knicks team, and he's definitely producing. But then obviously there's no Julius Randle out for the season.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaiah Hartenstein is kind of covered for Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah.
Come back from injury now, and I wonder what's going to happen with that situation. Are they going to manage him a little bit better and potentially, bring him slowly into the fold again? Like, there's some good pieces there, but I don't think it's enough for them to be able to make a super deep run. Like, this Sixers matchup is difficult for them, and I wonder if those minutes that those guys have played, and it's a lot of them. I know OG Anunoby is still on his way back to being his best, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But now we know what happened on the East. Let's move over to the West. So that game on Sunday between the Lakers and the Pelicans, LeBron came out from the off, and I think, what was it, in the first half, how many assists did he get?
13, bro.
13
first half assists, career high.
It was a crazy performance from LeBron, but it kind of gave you that inkling that we mean business now. This is playoff mode. We're coming in here and we're gonna do what we need to do. He was on fire, and they coasted to that win, which meant that they was gonna end up as the 8th seed at the end of the regular season, with an opportunity to play against the Pelicans again in the play, which we'll discuss a bit later. But one thing I want to ask you, because obviously we now know the outcome of what's happened here, but like, are the Lakers in a different mindset this time around because of some of the kind of good things that have happened across the course of the season? So obviously they had the win in the in-season tournament, which gave them a bit of a boost, but then they kind of dipped off, get to All-Star break, and then they've had to really rise back up again. Players like D'Lo stepped up massively this season. I think he's got a career high from the 3-point line. AD stayed healthy for the majority of the season. I think between him and LeBron, they missed 17 games or something like that this year, which is kind of mad. Like, between the two of them, like, to not miss that many games. So they look like they're in a good period of health heading into these playoffs. Like, how crucial are these additional things to help the mindset of the Lakers heading into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the Lakers are going to need to be at their best for the playoffs. First round matchup against Denver. They're at their best when LeBron's putting the ball on the floor, really driving into defenses and making them collapse, and then making his decision then whether he's going straight to the rim or kicking it out for a shooter. Like you said, D'Angelo Russell, he's really had a good season. I think he's made the most 3-pointers for a Laker in a single season. He broke the record at some point in the latter stage of the season. Austin Reeves has really improved after a slow start. Rui Hachimura looks like he's slowly getting back to what he was producing in the playoffs. Those little things are going to be very important. Then you've got AD rebounding, scoring the ball, being a defensive beast. LeBron, again, being an excellent playmaker, just surveying the defense and cutting them apart dishing up to his guys, his shooters in the corner, their elbows and all of that stuff. So the Lakers have played some good offensive basketball in the second half of the season. They've had a good record. They've won most of their games. And that will be a good omen for them carrying it all the way into this Denver series where they were swept the last time out. And now they need to find a way to kind of mitigate those exploitations that Denver were able to find. And there will be a lot of questions, obviously, that we'll speak about in a second on whether they'll be able to prevent it and whether individuals will be able to do a little better than they did in the Western Conference Finals last season. But it definitely is a good omen for them that they're playing their best basketball in the final stretch of the season when they really needed it most. It's just a shame they couldn't have put that all together after winning the in-season tournament, because it was like they exerted so much energy. We saw this with the Pacers as well. A lot of teams who exerted so much energy in that moment early in the campaign had a nosedived in that little middle part of the season leading into the All-Star break, and it makes you think maybe this is why teams kind of coast into that All-Star break period, because they don't want to exert so much energy early on the campaign so that they are susceptible to little dips in periods of the season where you can't really can't really recover from those moments in real time, because other teams are up to speed and you're kind of trying to catch up because you kind of you came fast out of the blocks, and now the teams are starting to accelerate because they put it all together and they're getting ahead of you. And as you're sprinting, as you're trying to catch up with them, you're now slowing down because you've accelerated way too quickly.
Yeah, I think to me, what's going to be interesting is LeBron's got this ankle problem, which hasn't affected him too much, but will it affect him as they move through the playoffs? AD's been healthy pretty much for most of the year. So what's going to happen with him? Can he stay healthy? Because he's going to have to lead this team through what is arguably going to be one of their toughest runs to an NBA Finals. And then which players are going to step up again? Because you need games from D'Lo, you need games from Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura. You know, those guys are definitely going to be a part of that rotation. And then you got Taurean Prince as well, like off the bench, where he's going to have to step up in moments. Like Gabe Vincent, the same. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how these pieces can push them forward. I mean, we're going to speak about their first round matchup, which is going to be an absolutely amazing series, because it's not going to go the way it went in the Western Conference Finals last year. As far as I'm concerned, it's a bit of a different kettle of fish when you're meeting each other in round one, as opposed to going through two hard series against some tough opponents just to get to the conference finals. But
yeah,
it's going to be interesting on that perspective. Let's speak about the Timberwolves going down to the Suns and missing out on solidifying that number one spot. We'll talk about OKC getting that number one spot, but the Timberwolves in a home game against a Suns team who they've been a bit hit and miss. Obviously, injuries to Bradley Beal, specifically for a lot of the season. Book has been in and out, but it's been in and around KD, and KD's been the most healthy this year out of all three of them. KD at 35 years old, who's been vocal about why he's been injured over the last few years, speaking about the crash dummies that are falling into his legs or something like that, doing something crazy. And they end the season with a win on the road against the Timberwolves, which solidified themselves in the first round without having to go through a play-in. And you know, Timberwolves slip up and don't end up becoming a number one seed. They end up third seed, and they actually play the Suns in a series now, which is going to be interesting to see. Now, why do you think the Timberwolves didn't have enough to get over the line there? Because, you know, it seems pretty interesting to me why they've just they started off the season so well. They've been in and around it, But in that final moment, they've just slipped off, and now they find themselves in a pretty tough series anyway. First round.
Yeah, I mean, for them it was tough, right? Because like I mentioned last week, it was going to be an interesting end to the season for Phoenix as well, because they could have been in the play-in. It could have been the Pelicans who secured that sixth seed, because that was the position they were in heading into the final games of the season. All of a sudden, those positions switch. We see the Pelicans who are fighting for a playoff spot now against the Kings. So, they had it all to play for. Phoenix. We saw a great performance from Bradley Beal and Cole, who contributed. They were all in there. We saw a post-game interview from Bradley Beal saying, I'm ready. I'm ready to go out there to compete in the playoffs and compete for a championship. They've experienced a lot of hardships, like you mentioned, through injuries and different stuff. But this is what the team were built for, to get into the playoffs and to compete for a championship. So it's going to be interesting to see what Phoenix can do. For the Timberwolves, in the game itself, they didn't really shoot the ball well from three, turn over the ball a lot, and it was a kind of lackluster end to the regular season. So they're going to want to improve upon that, and it has been a positive season overall. If they had won the game, I think they already would have had a good chance of finishing number one seed. I mean, Denver and OKC, it was determined on the tiebreaker, because I believe our record was 3-1 on Denver in the regular season. So that's what got us the number one seed, OKC, the youngest team to clinch a number one seed in NBA history. So yeah, for the Timberwolves, I wouldn't be too worried about it. I did see some reaction from Anthony Edwards, and he wasn't too happy about the result. And was speaking about different things when reporters were asking him questions. But ultimately, they've got to go into this now against Phoenix. Funny enough, it's going to be a tough series. We'll see what happens. 3 versus 6 matchup, and it's an exciting one, because you look at the Timberwolves, good defense. They've got some offensive stars who can really step up and shine and who want to prove a point. Whereas Phoenix, you could argue they're a team who want to prove a point as well, because we haven't really seen those three on a consistent basis to determine how dangerous they can actually be. And what a time better to prove that than in the NBA playoffs in the first round against one of the best teams in the NBA so far this season. So I don't know. For the Timberwolves, I think it's still a great season. 3rd seed, one of the best campaigns, 56 wins. Now it's time to translate everything, all of the energy you've exerted in the regular season, over to the playoffs.
Timberwolves are win now. I mentioned it last week. They need to do something in this playoff with a Rudy Gobert, a Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards leading the charge. Like, they have to be making their mark on this playoffs at least. I don't know how that will happen. It's just they need to. You can't put up these wins in the regular season and it fizzle out in the first round type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Let's move over to OKC, bro, because they've capped off their season by making history. Number one seed and the youngest to do it in NBA history. What has happened from like, because now we can say, like, there's no more of this talk from yourself where it's like, slight progress, baby steps. They've jumped from a playing game last year, which we watched it all together. A playing game last year, I believe it was against the Pelicans, correct? And they lost.
I believe so, yeah.
Or they beat them and then lost the second game, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just trying to figure out who they played. So I feel like they beat the Pelicans on the road. I remember watching that game.
Okay, so we beat New Orleans.
Yes.
And then we eventually lost to Minnesota.
Yeah. So to go from a playing game to now the number 1 seed in the West, something has happened here. Like to a major in a major way across the organization to get them to where they are. And then to cap it off with a win against the Mavs to basically just say we're here now. Like, talk to me, bro. Like what does this feel like as an OKC fan?
Yeah, it feels good, bro. It's been a massive transformation. You know, if you heard from what I was saying at the start of the campaign, I was trying to keep it down. Obviously, we were expecting that incremental rise with the introduction of Shet, but overall, obviously, Jalen Williams taking the jump as well. SGA doing what he does, but to be the first seed, to achieve that feat in a Western Conference that you could probably say was the most competitive Western Conference in a lot of years, it's a massive achievement, and it's gonna be fun to see what this team can do in the playoffs. Just speaking of the regular season, you know, first in blocks and steals, 3-point percentage, we shot the ball really well. Guys like Ludo, Isaiah Joe were a big part of that, taking jumps and improving in that regard. You know, offensive rating, defensive. Well, this is a two-way team. So you can see why they had a lot of success. They compete, their stars compete on both ends of the floor. Shea, he's one of the leaders in steals. One sec. Damn. Man, he's one of the league leaders in steals. He's definitely up there. Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, of course, a big part of that coming into the team and doing what he does. It's just been a beautiful thing seeing this team mesh, gel, and then rise and improve, even as this season has gone on. So it's been a very positive campaign, man.
I mean, like I still don't understand it. I can't understand it. I don't understand how they've been able to overcome a Clippers team with James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, who for the most part of the season they've been healthy. Specifically Paul George, like, you know, after the last couple of years, you know, I mean, Kawhi went down. He's getting his way back onto the court. To be a Lakers team with AD and LeBron James, to be out a Warriors team with Steph and Clay and Draymond, like the fact that they've been able to overcome all of these teams just kind of shows you what kind of progress they've made and how they've made their mark, right? And with the way the playing games are gonna go, they'll find out who their opponent will be in the first round. It's looking like a favorable matchup who they will face off against, regardless of who they play against now, because you've got two teams that haven't been as good this year when you compare it to previous years that they, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Like there could be a potential path into the second round in a lot of these guys' first playoff experience, which I'm interested to see because it's been a minute since we've seen OKC in the playoff proper, and with another young team, can they really make a big run at this Western Conference when you've got the coach of the year in Mike Daigneault, which I think was confirmed a couple of days ago, or is going to be confirmed soon. The fact that you've got all of these assets and an opportunity to manipulate them to be able to even take this team to another level is like, that center position. I'm very intrigued to see who is going to come in and take that position. To be honest with you, how they're going to play it, like, so. Yeah, it's looking real interesting for OKC, and that pathway into the second round looks favorable when you look at who their opponent could be. It could be New Orleans, it could be the Kings.
Yeah, we'll find out missing out. Both teams are missing out on key players now, so
yeah,
you never know.
It's gonna be interesting. Let's actually move into the play-in now. So obviously, play-in begins on Tuesday night with the Lakers taking on the New Orleans Pelicans, a rematch essentially of what was the end of the season game between those two sides. Zion Williamson, 40-point game in his first real taste of playoff action. Or well, kind of playoff action. Putting up that 40 ball. He was going in. He did everything that you possibly could do in a game. And ultimately they fell short because D'Lo was shooting lights out from three, keeping them at arm's length. LeBron James, AD doing the business on the floor. Taurean Prince coming off the bench, hitting threes. Gabe Vincent doing what he needed to do, couple winning plays in the game, hit a free. Like, it's such a shame that now Zion's gone down with this hamstring injury. But the thing that stood out the most to me, fourth quarter, Coach Willie Green, Brandon Ingram was on the bench for a lot of it. And when I saw that, I was like, has he conceded? Has he decided, you know what? We're better off losing this game because we don't want to play Denver in the first round. And instead, you know what I mean? Because it got to a point in the game where it was like, there's only looking like one winner. Then Zion goes to the bench and he doesn't return. He storms off back to the locker room.
Yeah.
And then Willie Green decides, I'm not putting Brandon Ingram back in. He was sat on the bench for probably like 8 minutes in the fourth. And I was like, yeah, this looks like they're conceding. They don't want to face Denver in that first round. So what do you think about that particular game, the flow of it? Like, you know, Zion's 40-point game and then the coaching decision at the end from Willie Green to decide I'm conceding here.
Yeah, Zion was extremely dominant, driving to the bucket. He was knocking down a couple mid-range shots as well. It was unfortunate when he exited with a hamstring injury. And then we found out he's not going to be playing against Sacramento. But you mentioned Ingram. In that game, I know he'd recently come back, but him, CJ in particular, two guys that you expect to really be the leaders alongside Zion, both of those guys struggled shooting. They shot 13 for 41 from the field. Oh, sorry, 8 for 27 from the field, sorry. No. And then all starters except Zion shot 13 or 41. So the rest of the team except for Zion were really inefficient. And then Ingram and CJ, they played some minutes. You mentioned Ingram not really playing as many minutes as you expected, but I guess in that case, do you rest them and hope that you get the best out of them in that final playing game? You're going up against a Sacramento team who really blitzed the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah,
I don't know, because Ingram's just coming back. CJ McCollum hasn't really done the job for you in a playoff setting, in a play-in scenario, in big games. So it's going to be a big ask to see both of those guys step up, especially without Zion now. How does that look? Maybe you see a better BI, but even then, what does that mean for you going down the line? Because there's already a lot of conversation saying, do these two guys fit in a team, knowing that they're both non-threats from beyond the arc? They do most of their damage in the mid-range or at the rim. So then you've got to put guys around them that shoot the ball well. And even though they've had a good enough season, there's still going to be those questions asked, especially if they don't get into the playoffs and they fail to beat Sacramento.
The thing that's interesting for me, that CJ McCollum performance was not great. Like, watching it, I was like, he's not aggressive enough. He's relying too much on that three ball. And when he weren't knocking them down, it was a problem for the whole team because now you're even forcing the shots that you don't even need to be taking. The looks ain't even making sense. So, like, I don't know what they could have done or what he could have done really to make an adjustment so that they could keep themselves into the game. But I do think that it got to a certain point where they were like, yeah, we're conceding here. We do not want to face Denver in that first round. And now they have to now go on the I think do they have to go on the road or they're home? I think they're home. I'm trying to think. I think they're at home. Yeah, they're at home. They're at home. So there's another opportunity here. But without Zion and potentially because hamstring injuries are, depending on what it is, if it's a strain, it's probably a 2 to 3 week thing. They could potentially see him in this in the playoffs if they can get past, if they even get past this game in the play and then go against OKC. They could. You never know. Should be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting from that perspective. Now let's move on to Golden State and the Sacramento Kings. And big up to man like Yank who came in here. Big up to Untame as well, who's another Kings fan as well. Big up to you guys. It should be interesting. He says that I've got to worry about the Kings without Monk and Herter. They're both out, which is going to be it's a big blow to their team anyway. But they were able to get through with Keegan Murray stepping up against the Golden State Warriors, and I watched that game. I watched that game to probably just about towards the end of that fourth quarter, and then I was like, yeah, it's time to go to bed, man. It's too late right now. But just watching the Warriors fall down in such a huge game that basically defines the future of this team. Because Klay Thompson, we've spoken about him. He was 0 for 10 in the game from the field. 0 for 10. Like, the fact that he put up that performance in one of the most important games, I said it already. He seems cooked. But I can't lie, that performance made me confirm that in my mind. Because you can't put that kind of performance up in an elimination game and then expect now to get paid at the end of the season, like as you renew your contract. I just can't see that happening. Like, what is going to happen now with the Golden State Warriors? Because I mean, the Kings, they've advanced. They have another chance to potentially get themselves into the playoffs again. Second season. It's not been the greatest of seasons for them. They've been inconsistent, the Kings. But what happens now with the Warriors? We spoke about it last week, but now we're in a position where we can confirm they are not in the postseason. It's over. Cancun.
Hey, first and foremost, I want to give some credit to the Kings, man, because they played a great game. Keegan Murray, 32 points, hit 8 threes for him. Keon Ellis, both ends of the floor. You know, he guarded Steph for a little bit of the game, and Steph had to work for his. I think he had 22 points. He shot 50%, but he wasn't able to get it going from free. And Golden State really needed that. So Keon Ellis has been a guy for the Kings where he's been a bit inconsistent in and out of the lineup. But towards the final stretch of the season, 60 games onwards, he's been getting more and more minutes bumped up, and he's been contributing, whether sometimes he's asked a bit offensively, defensively as well. So massive credit to him. I mean, when we're speaking about Klay, obviously, I've given him some praise since he came off the bench. There seemed to be an improvement on his side. He simplified his game a little bit, was knocking down shots again. 0 for 10 tonight. It's definitely not a good way to bow out for the season. And you saw him kind of soaking it up when they were all walking to the tunnel. Like, could this be my final time walking out in a Golden State uni? You never know. Andrew Wiggins, 4 of 11 from the field. It's been a lackluster season for a multitude of reasons. We're not really gonna focus on off the court stuff, because obviously that's your issues. You need to deal with that. But on the court, he's been a shadow of himself when you think about the best of Andrew Wiggins in that title winning season in 2021. Just hasn't been himself at all. 22. So, Kuminga, Moody, they had some good production off the bench. And those are two young guys that will step up for Golden State time and time again. But ultimately, the team weren't good enough. And I mean, Draymond Green, he was probably one of their more efficient shooters from beyond the arc, and that says it all. I heard the commentator say, like, it was his most efficient season shooting from free. And I was like, rah. Obviously, he's missed a lot of games. And we've seen some reports as well saying, people in the Golden State hierarchy are kind of worried about his behavior. and the lack of control that he has at times. So is that a factor that they might, consider him in during the off season when they're looking to make their changes to try and maximize the rest of Steph Curry's prime? So there are a lot of questions for Golden State to answer right now. A lot of hard things to do with Clay being an unrestricted free agent. How do you make those maneuvers? Chris Paul, I believe his contract is also running out this season. So
I think he's got a player option, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So, do you make moves? Do you bring back certain guys? Who knows? But shout out to the Kings, man. Great performance. And they had this one wrapped up pretty quickly.
Yeah, like they brought it to Golden State, man. Like and that's what you do when you got a home game in an elimination aspect. Like you have to bring it to the team that is on the road, win the game, and then put themselves through to get into that second elimination game now against the Pelicans. And to be honest with you, without no Zion Williamson, they'll feel confident. How far their ceiling is in this playoffs, I don't know. It probably looks like a round one, but once again, you don't know because you're playing against an untried and untested team in OKC. If you get through, who, where you've got a team where you've got some experience, there's some guys that are going to step up a little bit more. Obviously, there's going to be, they've got Sabonis, they've got Fox, and they've got Keegan Murray who could potentially add to that because he's such a lights out shooter from three when he gets hot. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to see kind of what happens there. But for Golden State, I mean, you're saying Clay soaking up everything and all of that. Like, I wonder what is going through his mind right now because it's like they've had such a very weird 6-year span as an organization, from winning championships to not making the postseason to winning another championship and now not making the postseason again. Like, they've been on a very sporadic journey. 6-year cycle has been nuts. And it's like they have been maybe over reliant on their guys that have basically built this dynasty and not look to develop young players at crucial points or be patient with young players at crucial points. Because when you bring in a James Wiseman, drafted very highly, it didn't work out for him. And I think part of that is because of his attitude. He thought he made it as soon as he made the NBA, and he was in a team, an organization that won championships, and thought, yeah, I've made it now. But you have to still work hard within that. You've got the Jordan Poole situation with Draymond Green and how that's kind of tainted things, and how I feel like it's had a knock-on effect on Andrew Wiggins. Of course, he's had some personal problems off the field, but I feel like that has also had a knock-on effect. And then you now look at the Clay situation and how he's just kind of nosedived, especially after the injury. Steph has not had the greatest of seasons to when you look at his standards, but how do you move forward here? Because I would have, if I was the person in the organization, I'm not bringing them back. Or like, I would give Steph an opportunity. Make your choice. You've given us everything you've given us here. Would you like to stay and be a part of us trying to rebuild this organization? Yes or no? If you say no, we'll facilitate the best move we can for you. As for Clay, I've seen enough. The inconsistencies is too much for me. And it's the same with Draymond. The inconsistencies are too much for me because one moment, everything is fine. The next moment, you're going to choke somebody out. I can't have it anymore. Like, I can't take it because now the next incident that you do, I don't know what they're going to do because they already went down the route of indefinite suspension because you have a prior history. If you do something next season, just to begin the season, we're in the first 5 games and then somebody gets punched again. Big problem. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's going to be some tough decisions. I mean, I'm looking at Chris Paul situation. I'm like, this is the crazy situation because, like, they brought him in and there was a lot of debate of, he's going to be, the guy off the bench who's going to lead the second unit and all of this type of stuff. How is he going to adjust to that role? And ultimately, he hasn't really had any impact on this organization, on this team. He got injured middle of the season and has just been trying to get himself back to some sort of playing form and stuff. and ultimately they've crashed out. Like, I'm interested in what work is happening behind the scenes, because their season's ended now and it should really start right now. Their new season should start right now. Like, in terms of the front office, the moves have to start right now for them, because this has become a very messy season for them. But yeah, as you mentioned, shout out to the Kings. You know, two of their main guys out of contention for return, I think, this season. And well, depending on how long, I think Malik Monk, depending on how long they stay in the playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at, you know, a double machine in Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, you know, is somebody that in the clutch situations, in them high pressure moments, he always delivers. And Keegan Murray stepping up after a really good rookie year and doing that in an elimination game shows you exactly what he's all about. And I feel to a certain extent, he does look at someone like Clay, and it's kind of ironic. He models his game a little bit after him. And the fact that he was able to do that to him on that day in an elimination game tells you everything you need to know about Keegan Murray's mindset and his mentality. And I feel like the Kings fans are excited of the prospect of potentially going on, getting into the playoffs and getting another run at it in round one. Can they light the beam again? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. All right, let's move on to last night's games. Now, this is going to be a big one. This Miami Philly game. It's going to be interesting, but I got to shout out my one guy.
Move in. Floor seats, crypto, I got my tool in. Fourth quarter yelling, why the fuck Batum in? She like.
Hey, that's why Batum in. Hey.
Nick Batum with 20 points off the bench to help Philly get over the line against the Miami Heat. It wasn't looking like that at halftime, though. The Philly fans were booing. They were down 51-39. And Embiid was looking like he was not fit and healthy at all. They were shooting the ball and it wasn't going in. Kyle Lowry, God bless him, 38 years old, running around the court. Defensive actions. But it wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't a great half for them at all, that first half. But they was able to turn it around. Obviously, you know, Nick Batum hitting those threes. Then obviously Joel Embiid, you know, putting some finishing touches on that game. You know, I saw a little crazy finish from Tyrese Maxey as well. He goes up to for the layup, slips out of his hand, and he taps it in with his left. But Miami were cruising. Everything they wanted. I mean, well, one, first and foremost, that zone defense was trapping Embiid on an island. So like he couldn't get any touches on the ball in that first half. And then the steals from Jimmy Butler, those winning plays that he always gets a part of, especially when we get into the playoffs. Got about 3 or 4 steals in that first half, if I'm not mistaken. And then goes down injured. He didn't want to leave the game. He had to, because obviously he got fouled, and then, you know, if you don't take the free throws, you're out of the game. So he had to take the free throws and then just basically continued on from there. After the little collision with Kelly Oubre Jr. Now, I saw Alonzo Mourning and Pat Riley as soon as Jimmy Butler went down, and like he was like, yeah, they had the look on his face like, yeah, this could be season over. It could be season over literally from here. Jimmy, commend him though, like fought the pain just to be able to get through, and well, I mean, he exited the game towards the end, but you know, like for him to get through, I mean, you got to commend, and I hope, like, you never want to see him go down or any top players go down. Like it's a shame, but it does beg the question though: if they were really strong in the regular season, would we even be in these kind of situations to see Jimmy? Because Jimmy Butler should be resting right now. His team should be resting right now. But he's not. They have to play in this elimination game and he gets himself injured. Like, let's talk 2 things. The Philadelphia 76ers. why do you think they were able to win that game yesterday? Like, what changed in that second half? Like, was it the pressure from the fans, or was it just Joel Embiid waking up, or was it just a combination of some coaching from Nick Nurse and Nick Batum pulling off all the stops?
I do think when you knock down shots that can change the energy in the arena, that can change the energy of the performance. And when you have a guy, Nick Batum, 17 second half points, he knocks down 5 of the 9 3-pointers for Philadelphia in that second half. That's enough of a spark plug to really push you forward, to come back into the game and take it over. I mean, like you said, there were boos. Philly were turning over the ball a lot, giving Miami a lot of points in transition on the fast break. Obviously, that situation with Jimmy Butler was really unlucky, where Kelly Oubre is going up high and then their knees collide on his way back down. Hate to see that happen, and now that's confirmed to be an MCL. He'll be out for a few weeks. But I think when you look at the first half for Philly, 3 of 18 from 3. In the second half, 9 of 17. Again, Batum a big part of that. It's just that improvement overall. And then you look at the guys in Miami, obviously a hobble Jimmy Butler, 3 of 10 from the field. Tyler Hero, who took a lot of the responsibility. 5 of 15, didn't shoot the ball well at all. And I know Chino he's had a lot to say about it online in regards to Tyler Hero. And if Chino was here, I know he'd say something about Joe Cronin and other people in that front office. But we'll leave that to Chino to vent online, innit? But I feel like the energy changed when you knock down those 3-pointers, and 12-point lead at halftime erased, and then they win that close 1-point lead. Like I said, Embiid has 11 in the fourth. He improves upon a slow start. Miami, they had good contribution from Jaime Jaquez, who continues to improve in his rookie year. Kevin Love as well. We knocked down some good shots off the bench, but ultimately it wasn't enough. And when your key scorers are struggling, it's always going to be hard when Philadelphia are knocking down shots at the clip, at the level of efficiency that they were in the game. So, Miami have another opportunity to see if they can go through, but it was a tough loss, a tough way for that game to kind of spin and turn around, because they were in control. And then they were the team kind of turning over the ball a little more, making those mistakes, conceding those 3-pointers time and time again, and not shooting the ball with a level of efficiency that I guess they bettered Philadelphia in the first half. But, at the end of the day, Philadelphia were really poor shooting from inside and outside from the field. Miami, they were all right. They got by and they had their lead. But when Philadelphia exploded now, there was no answer for that. Whereas in the first half, they were constantly changing their defensive schemes to prevent those guys getting on ball, whether it was switching from man to zone and so forth. They just weren't able to find those answers in the second half.
The thing that's interesting for me, right, is Miami at that point where they've hit a ceiling, right? Where last year was like they definitely had a lot of luck, but then there were teams like the Bucks and the Celtics for sure, I can say, underestimated them as an 8th seed. They were able to cruise basically through that series against New York, and that was only because of the inconsistencies from Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. This year, I don't think that if they was to meet, that would be the same case. With the Jalen Brunson performing the same way, but even at a higher level now, and then you've got Josh Hart, you got Dante DiVincenzo, and then you've got OG as well. Like, there'll be actual serious problems for that Miami team. They've been inconsistent, and you can kind of see they can control games at a certain point, and then they just fall off. They fall off the gas, and it's like you don't have the depth in your squad or quality of depth in your squad to be able to take your foot off the gas. Like, you actually have to go all out every single game, and then when you do that, you're definitely gonna burn out at some point. But That's kind of what happened last night from what I could see. They really ran the Sixers ragged in that first half. And then the inconsistency started to creep in. The shots aren't falling, and the Sixers are getting momentum. And then they were able to get over the line. And it's like they can't keep doing this year in, year out, where they don't have consistency in the regular season. They find themselves in an elimination game just to try and get themselves into the playoffs, and then try now and gather everything to go on a run. I just, like, me personally, when I look at that, I'm like, that just can't keep happening. Kind of liken it to back in the day when Arsenal were under Wenger, were like constantly getting fourth place finishes to finish in the Champions League. And they were hanging on literally towards the end of the season to solidify that fourth place until they fell into the Europa League for the first time in God knows how long. And then it just started a fall.
Spiraling.
They started to spiral. Like, there's only so much you can do to hang on to a particular position when you're a professional sports team or athlete or whatever. Like, and now they go into that game against the Chicago Bulls, and we're going to touch on that in a bit, where the Bulls have been a very difficult opponent for many teams this year. And that, they're going to be at home, so there's home court advantage there. But the Bulls don't mind getting themselves into a bit of a slugfest. They don't mind scrapping with you defensively, right? And they don't mind taking a game into overtime because they've got one of the best clutch players in the league overall, like in DeMar DeRozan. So I'm wondering what's going to happen with the Miami Heat. I've already said this. I said this a few weeks ago. I want them in round one because I need to avenge what happened last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's a shame that there's no Jimmy Butler, but at the same time, Spo's such a madman that no Jimmy Butler will make it even, like, he's going to galvanize that squad of players even
does
more.
That unlock Bam Adebayo even more?
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking offensively, they're going to be even better because of what Spo can do as a coach. Jovic gets a bigger role in the team. Bam obviously is going to be now the main offensive weapon really in that team. He's going to obviously great two-way guy, but it's going to be even more.
You can't lean off of Tyler Hero offensively. He's way too inconsistent as he's a shot chucker.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what Spo's able to cook up with no Jimmy Butler. But they'll have to get past the Bulls. And we'll move on to the Bulls. Obviously winning that game. Kobe White. Now I got a thing about Kobe White, yeah. He definitely should be the most improved player this year. He deserves the award. I don't like it that we give the most improved player to young players who already have the potential. They're just kind of on their trajectory. Like, so usually you have a good first year as a rookie. If you're like a highly placed rookie, top 20, you have a good first year. You dip off in the second year because now teams are actually scouting you and trying to find ways of limiting your game. And then the third year, you go back up again. It's generally the trajectory of a young player. We should not be rewarding those players with most improved because that was always going to happen for them. It's just the trajectory of a good young player. We should be rewarding most improved players to players that you weren't even considering them in any sort of end of season awards, or even they were just a player that, they come on the court. We don't really have any schemes for them because they're not really affecting the game in any kind of way. And then all of a sudden they start putting together consistent games across a course of a regular season. Those are the players you reward with the most improved. And Kobe White falls within that category. Not a high pick. Wasn't expecting much out of him, but has been slowly improving his game. Last season, you could see some of the kind of jumps he was making, especially from a 3-point line. Defensively, he's really bought into that. I feel like it's an Alex Caruso kind of effect where he's very infectious. That when you're around him, you want to play defense, you want to go hard every single game. I feel like he's taken that from him. And this year, you've seen him explode. That's the most improved player for me. Easily. Goes off for 42 last night. The Bulls win 131 to 116 and eliminate the Hawks, which we need to speak about them because that's a crazy situation there in ATL. But with the Bulls winning last night, do you reckon that they have enough to be able to get past Miami and make it through to the first round? Like, what do you think? Because I feel like there's a little outside chance because they've really done well this season without Zach LaVine. To be honest with you, they've done well, like to be in the position that they're in right now.
I think they can. Obviously, you mentioned Kobe White, who is a strong candidate for most improved, 42. The support that he had around him from DeRozan, Vucevic, Ayo Dosunmu in that starting lineup, who those guys compete on both ends of the floor, especially Ayo Dosunmu, very important to their success in that starting lineup. DeRozan, obviously, Vucevic, if he has it going offensively, is a dangerous player. Sorry. The only worry was Alex Caruso. Obviously, gets his ankle walked on by Andre Drummond. And I did see something recently that saying the swelling has kind of gone down. So there's a bit more optimism on him being available for that Miami game, but not yet sure just yet. Is available will likely be a game time decision. He is important to them on both ends of the floor, defensively as well. But overall, I think the Bulls have a really good chance. It was one of those games that a lot of people are looking at and saying it's the late game, especially for those in Europe. We ain't really too bothered about it. But now going into this game against Miami, it gets interesting because if you have the Bulls playing the way they did against Atlanta, and to be honest, the Hawks didn't play well. Anyway, they didn't play well. It wasn't really a competition. I think DeJounte Murray had a good offensive game. Trae Young struggled. We've seen that from him in playoff games. We've seen that from him, especially him coming back into the season quite late. They didn't get what they needed out of the likes of DeAndre Hunter as well, 3 of 16 shooting. So, those guys need to be better. And, we speak about the questions that need to be asked. I mean, since making the Eastern Conference Finals, they've been knocked out of round one, I think a couple times, and now out of the play-in. So Atlanta find themselves in a position now where do you go? Because you've brought in DeJounte Murray. You've got rid of John Collins, who was at one point looked at as a cornerstone of your franchise with Trae Young. It hasn't worked out. He's gone elsewhere. You bring in DeJounte Murray. You have DeAndre Hunter, those guys that you're hoping develop and mesh well as a team. That backcourt hasn't worked out. And, other guys haven't really made a jump. Clint Capella, even though he is a good NBA player to have, he hasn't really put you closer to being a winning and competitive team. Trae Young, he's a good player, but he also has his deficiencies on the defensive end. Offensively, sometimes he is not all the way there and he can be inconsistent. I think it showed in this game, 6 turnovers, 10 assists. So, you do have some questions to ask about what you do with that backcourt, how you potentially improve this team, because you've given up a lot to be in the position you're in right now, and it's not exactly a position of winning.
I mean, you got to blow up the Hawks at this point. After 3 years of like just kind of mediocrity as a team, like you kind of have to blow it up for me. And how you do it, I don't know, because Trae Young, they always bring this up. He's never had any all-star level players around him to be able to lead this team. But ultimately, that's not an excuse because I saw moments in that game yesterday where on defense he wasn't trying. So there's the level of effort that you need to have, because it's not all offense, and he has this narrative around him where he's not a great defensive player. So it's like, what are you gonna do to improve your game on the other end of the floor so that you can elevate your team and your teammates? Because you know what DeJounte Murray can do on both ends of the floor. You know what he can do, and I feel like even with him, he's definitely slacked on his defensive duties since coming to ATL, especially coming out of an organization like the Spurs where they don't allow you to do that. Like you have to be a player that's locked in on both ends of the floor. He seemed more interested in getting more touches. Look at the game he played against the Celtics, man. Like what was it? What was it 40
Yeah.
points or 44 shots? Like he was so interested in making sure that he got that 40 ball by taking as many shots as possible. Like I'm at that point where they've got a good coach in Quinn Snyder. They have to restructure this squad because it's obviously not worked out. Gave up a lot for DeJounte Murray. In my opinion, you kind of have to put him as one of the key pieces. You could get a lot for someone like Trae Young, who may at this point decide, you know what, I've done 5 years, 6 years here in Atlanta. I'm looking for somewhere else where I can go and win. Because I feel like he's a good player and he can contribute. He needs to adjust some things within his mindset defensively. Where could he go? We spoke about there's a potential point guard spot for the Spurs. Could he go out west and pair up with Wemby and help accelerate that team a little bit more as they start pushing themselves into positions of play-ins and stuff like that, you know, in the Western Conference? Because when you got somebody like Wemby, you can't waste that time. You just can't. So that might be interesting. Could there be a situation where, you know, the Cavs may need a point guard, you know, with Donovan Mitchell? If that doesn't work out this year, does Donovan Mitchell decide to move somewhere else? And you know what I mean? Like, you know, there's an interesting situation happening because obviously Brooklyn may need to reshape again. They've got themselves a new coach, as far as I remember, this past week. So
Yeah.
it could be something interesting going on there. Like, I just think that at this point the Hawks are basically at the limit. They can't go any further, in my opinion. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I agree, man. I find it hard to kind of look at their team right now and see how they improve, you know? And that was an interesting point you brought up regarding Trae Young. Where do you go from here with him as a player? You have your sample size now with him being the lone guard, with him having the guard next to him, and it hasn't really worked out with Trae Young. So is it time now to move on? I don't know. And how do you do that? How do you achieve that after committing so much? Sorry. After committing so much to trying to be a good team, a serviceable team. I don't know, man. Because you've got Clint Capella, you've got DeJounte Murray, Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, all of those guys that you've been able to obtain, bring in from elsewhere. And it just looks like your team's a little directionless right now.
Boy, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens off-season wise for Atlanta, but for Chicago, one more chance at potential playoffs, which would be interesting to see what they can do against Miami tomorrow. Cool. To end the show, we're just gonna run through predictions for game 1 on Saturday. So let me just quickly share my screen. So let's have a look. That early game that kicks off the NBA playoffs. The Magic taking on the Cavs. Who do you think takes game 1, bro?
I think Orlando take game 1 in Cleveland. I'm gonna say Orlando.
That's a tough one, you know, because you know after last year's series against the Knicks where they just kind of fell on their sword and it was done in 5. I'm going with the Cavs, man. It's gonna be a really good series and a good game. But I got to give it to the Cavs. They have to perform. They cannot allow this.
I feel like it will be a situation where they get caught out by the young Orlando team and they have to question themselves and fight back into this series. It will be a loss in that first game that kind of allows them to hold themselves accountable and come alive to make this a competitive series.
I hear it. The next game on Saturday, the Suns against the Timberwolves. Timberwolves kick it off. What do you think is gonna happen in this one, bro?
I'm seeing Minnesota take game 1. They want to bounce back after that loss. Final game of the regular season. And, it's a better way to do it in front of their home crowd. They got Ant-Man going crazy, defensively getting stops. This, I think, could be a statement win in their playoff, at the beginning of their playoff journey.
I'm going to have to go the opposite, bro. I'm putting it in the hands of KD. You're going to see KD lead them to victory in game one. Like, I feel like he's had such a great season this year. He's healthy. Bradley Beal's back. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I'm giving it to the Suns game one. I feel like they're going to run it back after Sunday's victory. Knicks versus the Sixers, man, like NN in here. Game one. Who are you giving it to? In the Garden.
I'm gonna say Knicks tape game one. I feel like it's gonna be a close one, very competitive series again. I think the Knicks will edge it out.
I agree with you. I think Knicks at home, Madison Square Garden, playoff atmosphere. This is what the third year or fourth year in a row that they're in the playoffs. Like Jalen Brunson doing his thing. I think they take game one.
Hey, we'll see how Embiid is looking, fam.
Embiid was tight. And anyway, man, this Team USA thing, the Cameroonians are on him, bro. The Cameroonians are on him, bro. So you ain't gonna be able to withstand the pressure, bro. As for Giannis, I don't know how long he's out for. They said a few weeks ago.
I'm seeing something now. So they're saying they're preparing to be without him for the start of the opening round against Indiana, but a hopeful treatment on the left calf strain will allow him to return sometime later in the series.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. And in the final game on Saturday, Nuggets against the Lakers, which is going to be such an interesting series because this is not the Western Conference Finals after battle-hardened 6 and 7 game series for the Lakers.
Yeah.
Game one.
This is an interesting run because for a lot of LeBron's playoff career, especially when his side has been the better team, we've kind of seen him kind of coast through game one. But I feel like this one is very important to stamp down a marker against the defending champions and say, hey, we're going to be competitive in this series. I feel like the Lakers will need to get a win early on, and I think they'll get one in this very game in Denver. It's going to be a difficult one, but I feel like they need to get that stamp of approval, that early win in the series if they want to be competitive. Because I think if Denver get a win, get a couple wins, they will run away with this series and potentially sweep them again.
I think you're right. The Lakers will win game one because of the fact that they have to make that marker. They have to get out in front. Especially with the Nuggets having home court advantage in this series. Like, they'll have to get out in front. I trust LeBron. Like, I trust him, especially in this particular series at this particular time. If you know that if you get past the Denver Nuggets and the defending champions, you can run at this West. Literally. This. Like, and so that's why this is going to be such a good series and it's going to be such a good matchup because, to be honest with you, when we were watching it last year, all of those games were close. Except for that fourth game where it started to run away because the Lakers were like, all right, well, we're already 3 down. Let's go for it. They tried and it didn't work. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Now, let's do Sunday's games and we can also decide on who we think is going to come through. So, who do you think comes through the 9-10 game? And this is Chicago Bulls and Miami to face the Celtics. And then what do you think is going to happen in game one?
I think it will be Miami to get through that game. And then I'll pick Boston in game one. I feel like, again, for Boston, they have a lot to prove in this playoff run. And especially if they get Miami, they're going to want to prove a point. They're going to want to get through that series relatively unscathed.
I agree. Miami home court against Chicago will beat them tomorrow night, even without Jimmy Butler. And they face the Celtics. Celtics win game one. We're at home. Last year, our home record in the playoffs was abysmal. This year, they made an emphasis to make sure that the Garden was rocking every single night. It was a sellout every night. They made so much noise. They're not like they have made it a point to step up. Now it's up for the team to step up, and I think they do that in game one. And they do play Miami. That's my belief. And I feel like because we got home court advantage throughout the playoffs, it's going to be so tough to even get anything from us there. So we'll see what happens. Potentially the series of the playoffs first round. Clippers Mavs early one as well. It's probably 8. I think it starts 8:30 in the UK time on Sunday. So that's going to be interesting. What do you think is going to happen in this game one?
Oh man, you know what? It's gonna be interesting. Kawhi, it's been reported that he's kind of getting injections because he has a bit of swelling in his knee, so he's being questionable for game one. So we'll see how fit he is because we saw early in the playoffs last year he kind of went off and then he got his injury, couldn't really return. So how does he fare this season? How fit is a Kawhi Leonard? His fitness, I think, is where this team will end up, even with a PG and a Russell Westbrook and so forth, and the depth that they have. I think that the Mavs will get game one.
Oh, that's a big choice, you know.
Yeah.
That is a big choice. I hear it, though. I hear it. No Kawhi, so... But then I'm expecting players to step up. James Harden caught a 50 ball in a game one against the Celtics last year. I'm expecting him to step up massively on this playoff run for the Clippers because he's playing for his future right now.
Yeah.
Real talk, he's actually playing for his future. So I'm taking Clippers game one against the Mavs, and I'm expecting a James Harden performance, especially if Kawhi is not there. Bucks, Pacers, game one, bro. What do you think?
Again, I'm going with the...
This is a tough one. It's a tough one.
I'm going with Pacers again.
Ooh.
I think they're gonna shut Bucks at the Pfizer Forum. I think they're gonna come out shooting, man. I'm saying Pacers.
You got Pacers. I think I'm gonna go Bucks. I feel like they've taken this last week to get themselves right. They got to take game one. I see Dame coming out and just kind of shooting. And I feel like they'll take the game one here because they got to keep themselves. Because at the end of the day, that was an abysmal performance in the playoff round one last year. I don't think they want to be that bad. Because if they lose this series, Giannis is going to be on some. I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. They're going to be begging for Bud back for sure. But yeah, I'm gonna go Bucks game one, and then the final game in the for round one, round one, game one, the Thunder. Who do you think come through the play-in game to face them, and then what do you think is gonna happen in this game?
Interesting. This is a tough game, man. Pels or Kings. I'm gonna say, obviously, no Zion for this game. Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter missing. They were able to get the job done against Golden State, and I feel like they'll get the job done against the Pelicans. And I think OKC will take game one. Kings versus OKC is a very interesting series. Obviously, you've got a guy in Sabonis, rebounds the ball very well. They've got guys like Fox who can get out in transition as well, really put pressure on the rim. And the same with OKC, to be honest. Those guys, they get out in transition, they can be very dangerous. They've got a lot of athletes, lob threat with Chet Holmgren and co. So I'm gonna say OKC to take game one and for the Kings to get through that game against the Pelicans.
I think the Kings will come through that game on the road tomorrow against the Pelicans and face you guys in round one. And I think OKC win game one at home, ready to take it to the Kings. It's going to be a tough series, though. I think it probably goes to 7. I think it goes to 7.
And I say a lot of people have been saying recently that this is the worst number 1 seed in NBA history.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, they have a lot to prove just because of the way people have been talking. And not in terms of they have a lot to prove pressure-wise. I'm saying they will have that in their memory banks, and they will be saying they want to go out there and they want to prove a point. Because all of a sudden the narrative has switched now where a lot of people are giving OKC praise. Maybe if they finish 2nd or 3rd seed, people would have been praising OKC and saying how it was a great season. And now because there's Shea and MVP convo and with a number 1 seed, all of a sudden this is one of the worst number 1 seeds in NBA history.
I mean, I've been seeing it all year, innit? Like they like for the Celtics, they've been like, oh, you know, we're number 1 seed, you regular season champions, and then they don't want us to have an easy run to the finals. We earned the right for that.
Come on.
We earned the right to have the easiest route to the finals. Like, I don't understand why people have this kind of thing. Like, we don't need to tough it out like Miami did last year, bro. We don't need to do that. And then only to go and lose in the finals. Nah. I'm going to take my easy route. If they lose tomorrow night at home against the Chicago Bulls, I'm taking the Chicago Bulls. And then I got to play Orlando or the Cavs. Yeah, we're good. Like, we'll beat both of them, no problem. And then the final in the conference finals, if it's the Bucks, if it's the Sixers, if it's the Knicks, I'll take any one of them because we'll beat them all as well. Get to the finals now. Whoever it is, I'm ready. It can be OKC. Yeah. It can be the Denver Nuggets. It can be the Lakers. It can be the Clippers. I'm ready. I want everybody. I don't care because what I saw from this team, historic. They put up some historic numbers, some historic stats, broke a lot of records. We're ready. Like we are like, and the thing about it is that people are not ready to see what we're like. Some of the stuff I've been seeing them do in games because how you have a 14-game lead over your whole conference. That means they've had a lot of time to do all sorts of stuff. Like, so when Miami if we get Miami and they start doing the zone defense, we have a weapon already, which we didn't have last year against. We were struggling against that zone. Now you've got a Kristaps who doesn't just stand in the paint like Embiid and looking for a touch. Like he can just operate on the perimeter. Now you have to come out to him, and then now all of a sudden you can't even utilize that drop coverage. You actually have to come out now, like, and he can shoot the free ball. Like we have things that can change this whole thing. Like people don't understand our defense as well. When we don't have the ball, our defense is nuts. I've seen us so many times this year make that shot clock expire for the other team because there's so much pressure on the ball. Like they're going for everybody. Like it's gonna be crazy. But if we don't win it all, I have to put my hands up. Failure. Big failure.
It's on me. It's on me.
If we don't win it, it's the biggest failure. Simple as. You can't do what you did in the off season, make a huge change to your team, and then you put up that regular season and don't win it. That's all I'm gonna say. But look, time to end the show right here. Hey, big up to man like C, and big up to Chino who's chilling on the islands right now. You know what I'm saying? Getting some well-deserved rest and relaxation with his family. He'll be back very, very soon. Big up to everybody who's been in the comments as well. Big up to all of you people. What are you saying on Saturday, bro? You playoff action, or are we doing it?
Hey, listen, I'm hoping and praying, man. I need to recover from this damn cough. Because this thing is, bro, it was here last week and it's still here, bro.
It's still here. Yeah, nah,
So-
bro. I ain't gonna lie.
Man,
Nah. You gotta take it. You gotta take some time, bro, to get this right. But hey, I'm gonna be watching. I'm not gonna be. I'm
bro,
gonna be watching.
if we're not there, I'm gonna be watching. If we're there, I'm gonna try my best to be there, man.
That's it. But hey, but big up to CM, man. He's coming here doing this. You know what I'm saying, coughing out lungs and that, bro. It's a bit mad. It's a bit mad still. But look, we'll be back, people. Next week, we're gonna be doing a bit of a mixture. Like last year, we went too crazy with these watch-alongs. They were tough. Your whole life schedule was flipped upside down, bro. Like in the middle of summer, bro, I'm moving like a zombie. Like the sun is out, but I want to go to sleep. Last year was a bit mad, yeah. This year, more recaps on the games that we watched, the series, the rounds, and then more on the weekends. We're going to be watching more of the games together, which would be good, so that we can at least have some regularity to our schedules. Because doing that is a bit mad. I can't lie. But yeah, Chino will be back soon, and yeah, make sure you stay tuned with us. Hit that like button, that subscribe button as well. If you're new, hit the notification bell. Make sure you go follow CM22ENT on Twitter, on the Twitch, on YouTube as well. Make sure you go subscribe to the channel too. United Twins back to end the season. Should be interesting to see what happens. I've checked out. No European football, man. I'm Ineos in. I'm all in for whatever they're coming to do. But the season's done for me.
Yeah, man. It's speaking every week is like a broken record, bro.
I'm done.
What else are we expecting? What are we expecting to see?
There's nothing else to say. I'm finished. Let's just end it now. You know what I'm saying? You know what? You know how frustrating it is. We still have a whole month of the season left, pretty much. So there's a whole month still left, and it's like we might get FA Cup final, yeah. But even with that, I have no expectations. Because we might lose on Saturday. I don't know. Bro.
Hey, listen, yeah, this weekend, yeah. Coventry, yeah. Say no more.
Hey, nah, man. Big up to everybody, man. We'll be back soon. Peace.